Sometimes the greatest danger is not from strangers outside our home, but from the very person we open our door to. This is the story of Michael, a hard-working Nigerian billionaire who believed he had finally found happiness after getting married. But what he never imagined was that the woman he trusted most would one day raise her hand against the man who gave him life, his blind and helpless father. It began on an ordinary afternoon. Michael arrived home earlier than anyone expected. The gates creaked open, his footsteps echoed across the marble floor, and just as he stepped inside, a scream pierced the air. His heart raced. He rushed toward the sound, only to find his frail father collapsed on the ground, his skin scalded, his cries filling the house. And standing over him was his new wife, Patricia, holding a steaming pot, her eyes burning with cold anger. Michael froze. The scene before him was something no son should ever witness, betrayal in its rawest, ugliest form. But how did it get to this point? How did a marriage that began with smiles and promises end in such horror? Before we dive into this unforgettable story of betrayal, justice, and the strength of a son's love, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell us where you're watching from. Michael had built his life on hard work, discipline, and a heart full of love. At 35, he was known not just for his wealth, but also for the kindness that made people respect him far more than the number of cars in his garage or the glass mansion he called home in Victoria Island, Lagos. He had grown up poor, raised by his father, Mr. Daniel, after his mother passed away when he was still a boy. Life had not been easy, but Daniel had done everything, even while blind, to ensure his son received an education. That sacrifice became Michael's driving force. He often said, "If my father could raise me with no eyes, I will live my life being his eyes." By the time Michael turned 30, his business empire had grown from a small logistics company into one of Nigeria's largest conglomerates. But despite his success, one thing was missing: companionship. Friends and relatives urged him to marry, but for years he refused. He poured his energy into his company and into caring for his aging father, who lived with him. Daniel's presence gave him comfort. Their evenings were filled with laughter, Daniel's favorite high-life music playing softly from the old radio, and the rich aroma of egusi soup filling the house. It was during this lonely period that Patricia entered his life. She was introduced to him by a distant cousin at a charity gala. Patricia, dressed in a flowing wine-colored gown that shimmered under the lights, carried herself with confidence. Her smile was bright, her words smooth. "Michael," she had said, holding his gaze a second longer than necessary, "I've admired your work with orphans. It shows a man's true heart." Her charm was undeniable. She laughed at his jokes, listened intently to his stories, and even showed genuine concern for his father. She visited often, bringing Daniel plates of jollof rice, plantain, and pepper soup. "Papa, you remind me of my own father," she would say sweetly, carefully adjusting his wrapper as though she were already a daughter to him. Michael, touched by her kindness, slowly began to let down the walls around his heart. Within a year, Patricia and Michael were married. Their wedding was the talk of Lagos. The bride wore a fitted ivory gown, while Michael, in a perfectly tailored navy blue agbada, could not stop smiling as he whispered promises into her ear. Guests praised Patricia's humility, her soft voice, her way of touching Daniel's hand as though she truly cared for him. "Michael has finally found his better half," people said. In the first few months, their home felt alive with new energy. Patricia filled the mansion with scents of baked bread and fried meat. She redecorated the sitting room with golden curtains and insisted they host family dinners every Sunday. Michael thought himself lucky. He often told his friends, "God has given me a second chance at happiness." But beneath the soft laughter and sweet gestures, small shadows began to form. Patricia disliked how often Daniel was included in everything. "Michael," she once whispered in their bedroom, her hair wrapped neatly in a silk scarf, "must your father live with us? You are a billionaire. We could hire the best nurses to look after him in his own house." Michael brushed it aside, thinking she was only worried about his father's comfort. "My father belongs here," he said firmly. "This house is his home as much as mine." At first, Patricia seemed to accept his words. She continued to serve Daniel his meals, smiling politely as she helped him to his chair. But her eyes sometimes lingered too long, her jaw tightening whenever Michael adjusted his father's blanket or held his hand. One rainy evening, as thunder rumbled over Lagos and rain splashed against the glass walls of the living room, Daniel reached for his walking stick and accidentally knocked over a cup of tea. Patricia flinched, her voice sharp. "Can't you be more careful?" The tone was quick, almost hidden beneath a laugh, but Michael noticed. He tucked it away in his mind, convincing himself she was only startled. Still, red flags appeared like whispers in the dark. Patricia began to complain more openly. "Your father slows us down, Michael. We can't travel easily. We can't even enjoy a dinner without worrying about him." Michael would sigh, looking at her with disappointment. "Patricia, remember who gave me life. If you love me, you must honor him." She would nod and smile, but the smile never reached her eyes. Life moved forward, but subtle changes began to creep into the household. Small warnings began to surface. Neighbors who visited noticed Patricia snapping at Daniel when she thought no one was listening. A housemaid once reported to Michael that she had seen Patricia leave Daniel alone without food for hours. But Patricia's explanations were always smooth, her voice calm, her eyes innocent. "These girls exaggerate," she would say, her laugh light. "They don't understand me." To outsiders, Patricia remained the perfect wife, graceful, respectful, attentive. She greeted visitors warmly, dressed in colorful Ankara outfits that hugged her frame, and played the part of a loving daughter-in-law. But within the walls of their home, Michael began to sense the faintest chill. He ignored it for a while. Love has a way of covering the cracks, making us believe that everything is fine. Michael wanted so desperately to believe that Patricia was the woman he had been praying for, that he brushed away his unease. Yet deep inside, Daniel, though blind, could sense it. One evening, as Michael helped him to bed, his father whispered, "Son, not all who smile with you carry love in their heart. Be watchful." Michael kissed his father's forehead and reassured him, but the old man's words echoed long after he turned off the lights. The house was full of light, food, and laughter. But under the surface, betrayal was quietly preparing to strike. The rain had started early that afternoon in Lagos, beating softly against the glass walls of Michael's mansion. A meeting in Victoria Island was canceled at the last minute, and for once, he didn't text anyone that he was coming home. He told his driver to stop by the gate and walked in alone. The compound was quiet, too quiet for a house that usually hummed with music and chatter. Inside, the air smelled of pepper and something sharp, like metal heated too long. From the corridor, he heard the faint whistle of a kettle, then a hurried shuffle, then, clear and thin, a trembling voice. "Ah, please, please." It was his father's voice. Michael's chest tightened. He moved faster, his shoes whispering over the marble. As he reached the kitchen doorway, the kettle's whistle rose, and steam curled up like a warning. He stepped in, and the world tilted. Mr. Daniel stood by the sink, blind eyes searching the empty air, hands shaking. Beside him, Patricia held a steaming pot with both hands. Her face was stiff, lips pressed together, eyes cold. In the same breath that Michael opened his mouth to speak, she tipped the pot. "Patricia!" he roared. The boiling water splashed, and Mr. Daniel cried out, a sound so raw and helpless that it punched through Michael's chest. The pot clattered to the tiles. Steam rose. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Michael did. He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling his father away from the counter, guiding him toward the tap. "Papa, I'm here. I'm here," he said, voice shaking. He turned on the cold water and let it run over his father's arm and shoulder, fighting to keep his own hand steady. "It's okay. You're safe." Behind him, Patricia's voice came sharp, too quick. It was an accident. He bumped the pot. He made me spill it." Michael looked back at her. Her hands were empty now, but her eyes were not frightened. They were flat, calculating. The kettle still screamed on the stove. The housemaid, Amaka, stood frozen by the door, one hand over her mouth. "Amaka," Michael said, not taking his eyes off Patricia. "First aid kit, now, and call the doctor. Tell security to come inside." Amaka ran. Patricia folded her arms. "Why are you calling security? I said it was an accident." Michael's voice was quiet. You just poured boiling water on a blind old man. My father. He grabbed my wrist, she snapped. Ask him. He's stubborn, always refusing my help. He makes me nervous. I was carrying the pot and he bumped into me. Under the running water, Mr. Daniel shivered. My son, he whispered. She hates me. Michael's jaw clenched. He whispered to his father. I hear you. Then glanced down. The floor was dry everywhere except beneath the sink. There was no splash trail near where Patricia had stood. The pot had been carried, not bumped. A dish towel lay folded neatly on the counter, like someone had prepared their scene. Something inside him went very still. Security arrived first, 2 men in dark uniforms. They paused at the threshold, faces tight, awaiting his word. Amaka hurried in with the kit, and Michael nodded for her to help him cool and cover his father's burns. He kept his eyes on Patricia. From the first day, he said slowly, I asked for one thing. Honor my father. He is ruining us, Michael. Patricia shot back, the control finally cracking. We can't travel. We can't host properly. Every dinner is about him. Every day is about him. I married you, not your father. You married into a family, Michael said, and you swore before God to love and respect. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. Respect? For what? He treats me like a servant. He spills food on my clothes. He calls me that woman when you're not around. You think I don't hear? He wants me gone so he can own you alone. Her eyes flashed. I won't live as a shadow in my own house. Michael stepped forward. And so you burn him? Patricia lifted her chin. It was a mistake. The doctor rushed in through the back entrance then, a family physician who had treated the household for years. He knelt by Mr. Daniel and began to work with Amaka, his voice calm, professional. Michael's hand hovered over his father's shoulder, careful not to touch the tender skin. Under the tap, steam faded. His father's breathing steadied. Get a clean sheet, the doctor said to Amaka. We'll bind the arm and move him to the guest room first, then the hospital. Michael nodded, and when he looked back at Patricia, he no longer saw his wife. He saw the danger his father had begged him to watch for. A small, cool fire lit behind his eyes. Security, he said quietly. No one leaves this house. Patricia's mouth fell open. Excuse me? You'll stay until the police arrive, Michael said, and you will answer for what you did. Her calm broke. You would call the police on your own wife? Tears came fast and bright now, but they didn't touch her voice. Michael, don't do this. Think of the news. Think of your company. People will laugh. They will say your home is a mess. My father's skin is burning, he said softly. Let them laugh at me. I will not hide evil to protect my name. She took a step toward him, reaching for his hand. Security moved, but Michael raised a palm and they stopped. He let Patricia stand close enough to see her makeup. Perfect, without a single line smudged by tears. Listen to me, she whispered. We can fix this. We'll tell them it was a slip. I'll cry. I'll apologize. Your father is old. He'll forget. We will move him to his own apartment with a nurse. I will be the perfect wife again. You know I can do it. Michael stared at her. The perfect wife you played in public, he said. Not the one who starved him when you thought I wouldn't know. Not the one who snapped at him when the guest turned away. Not the one who pressed his shoulder until he flinched. Her eyes narrowed. Who told you that? Michael pulled his phone from his pocket and held it up. On the screen, a camera feed paused. The small nanny cam he'd placed in the kitchen after Daniel's unexplained fall. He tapped, and the clip played. Patricia lifting the pot, watching Daniel, waiting, then tipping the water with a hard, deliberate motion. The audio caught Mr. Daniel's cry and Patricia's first icy words. The room went silent except for the gentle run of the tap. Patricia lunged for the phone. Security stepped in, firm and calm. She pulled back, breathing fast, face twisting. He is ruining our marriage, she shouted, the truth bursting out at last. He has taken your heart from me. Michael's voice dropped to a whisper. My father gave me my heart. The doctor looked up. We need to move him now. Michael bent to his father. Papa, we're taking you to the hospital. I'm with you. I won't leave you. Mr. Daniel's hand found his son's wrist and held it. I know, he murmured. I feel your hand. I hear your voice. They raised him gently. Emma wrapped the clean sheet. Security cleared the passage. Patricia stood by the doorway, breathing hard, gaze cutting through the room like a knife, but it had lost its edge. The mask was gone, and what stood there was plain and ugly. At the front hall, Michael stopped and looked back at her. "From today," he said, each word measured, "you will never stand over my father again. You will never raise a hand in this house. You chose wickedness, and now you will face it." "Michael, please," she whispered, and for the first time there was a tremor in her voice. "Don't end my life." "You ended it yourself," he said. "I only opened the door so the truth could walk in." He turned away and guided his father out into the rain-washed evening, the air cool and honest on his face. The siren of the ambulance wailed faintly beyond the gate. As they reached the steps, Mr. Daniel squeezed his son's hand once more, and Michael felt a steady strength move through him. A quiet certainty that love had not failed here. He had simply been asked to prove it. Behind them, security waited with Patricia for the police. The kettle on the stove had long stopped screaming. In its place was a deep, ringing silence, the kind that comes after a storm breaks and the sky begins to clear. The days that followed were filled with both pain and clarity. At the hospital, Mr. Daniel's burns were treated with care. Though the scars remained, his spirit, like always, proved unbreakable. He often told the nurses, "Blindness never stopped me before, and it won't stop me now." Michael never left his side. Justice came swiftly. With the nanny cam footage and testimony from the maid, Patricia's lies unraveled in court. The woman who once dressed in flowing Ankara gowns and smiled gracefully at family gatherings now stood in the dock, her head lowered as the judge read her sentence. She was convicted of attempted murder and cruelty toward a dependent. The newspapers carried the story for weeks. "Billionaire's wife jailed for attacking blind father-in-law," blared the headlines. The society that once praised Patricia's elegance now turned its back on her. Her friends disappeared. The same people who clapped at her wedding whispered as she was escorted in handcuffs. Her fall from grace was sharp, and it was public. Meanwhile, Michael chose a different path, one of healing. He brought his father home to a new wing of the mansion, remodeled with warmth and safety in mind. Every evening, Michael sat with his father, and together they shared bowls of pepper soup while listening to old high life songs. Time, as it always does, moved forward. 5 years later, Michael stood not just as a billionaire businessman, but also as a philanthropist. He founded the Daniel Foundation for the Blind, a charity that funded schools, hospitals, and training programs for visually impaired children across Nigeria. At the opening of the first school in Enugu, Michael held his father's hand on stage. The crowd cheered as Mr. Daniel declared, "A man may lose his sight, but he does not lose his purpose." Children ran across the new playground, their laughter bright, and for Michael, it was a picture of redemption. From betrayal had come a legacy of hope. Michael's personal life also found renewal. Though the betrayal of Patricia had cut deep, he did not allow bitterness to define him. 3 years after her imprisonment, he remarried, not out of loneliness, but out of gratitude. His new wife, Esther, was gentle and kind, a teacher devoted to special needs children. Together, they built a quiet family, blessed with 2 children who grew up knowing the story of their grandfather's resilience and their father's courage. As the years passed, those children grew into adults who carried the same values of love and responsibility. His eldest daughter, Linda, became a lawyer fighting for the rights of the elderly. His son, David, took over the foundation, expanding it across West Africa. They often sat by their grandfather reading aloud to him, making sure his world was never darkened by silence. Patricia, on the other hand, faded into obscurity. After serving her prison term, she returned to a small rented, rundown apartment where no one knew her name. The woman who once demanded luxury was seen carrying buckets of water, bargaining for tomatoes in the market, living far from the life she had once flaunted. She had traded love for envy, family for ambition, and in the end, she was left with nothing but the echo of her own bitterness. For Michael and his family, the betrayal was no longer a wound, but a lesson. They had learned that love without respect is poison, and trust without wisdom is dangerous. They also learned that resilience, choosing to protect, choosing to forgive, choosing to rebuild, was the greatest strength of all. Looking back, Michael often told his children, "Evil is clever. It wears a smile, but in the end, it destroys itself. Love, however, leaves a legacy that outlives us. And so the mansion that once echoed with tension became a home filled with peace. Daniel passed on years later at the age of 90, his hands still clasped in his son's. His funeral was not a sad occasion, but a celebration of a man who had walked in darkness, but guided his son into light. Thousands came, students from the foundation, neighbors, business partners, all to honor the blind man whose story had changed lives. As Michael stood before the crowd that day, his voice steady, he said, "My father taught me that true wealth is not in what we keep, but in what we give. And though betrayal tried to destroy us, it only pushed us closer to the purpose God intended." The story of Michael, his father Daniel, and Patricia's downfall is more than a family drama. It is a reminder that love must be guarded, respect must be demanded, and cruelty must never be excused. Wealth and status cannot protect a home if the foundation is cracked by betrayal. In every family, there will be moments of trial. Sometimes those who claim to love us most may be the very ones who test our hearts. But when we choose resilience, when we honor those who sacrifice for us, and when we refuse to let evil go unchallenged, we build a legacy stronger than any empire of money. And now, dear listener, what would you have done in this situation? Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and check out more stories here, because every tale carries a lesson that just might change a life.